Hey everyone, and welcome back to PDA UK, and of course, across the Neurodivide podcast. The amazing Tigger Pritchard is going to join me, and we're going to talk about things from the perspective of a neurotypical being myself and a neurodivergent being Tigger. As I say, welcome back to PDA UK and then across the Neurodivide podcast. Before we go on, I want you to go hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell. You'll always know when new content's coming up. I am joined again for Across the Neurodivide with the amazing Tigger Pritchard. How are you, Tigger?
I am fine, thank you. So welcome everybody. Forgive me a little bit today. I might cough a little bit. I'll try and mute it when I do. I'm just post-COVID by about 3 or 4 weeks, and it's still lingering a bit. So my apologies if the voice sounds a bit funny. If I do cough, I'll try and hit the mute button so it doesn't interfere. But it's so good. We've already chatted for like 5 hours, haven't we?
Oh, this is what always happens.
Are we
Half the show's been done. We're just going to be repeating what we've already discussed. Yeah. So, how have things been in your world, my man?
Busy. As I mentioned, I got COVID at last. I think it was positive for 9 days, and it floored me. And then, as you can kind of hear, I've got that lingering bit afterwards, where every so often it gets to my breath, and it interfered with lots of routine structures. So, from an anxiety viewpoint, that wasn't great. And then, like so many of us out there, it's that back to school bit. So there's lots going on with so many awesome families out there struggling with a few things that don't always go according to plan, but it's never their fault. But life is great, busy. It's awesome to be seeing you again. And we've said it before. One day we will do a podcast together in the same room.
We will. We are going to do this. In fact, I'm gonna aim to do this. I think that should be our goal for the next one, is to actually be joined together somewhere, and even if it's meeting up at a coffee shop and just chatting in a coffee shop or something like that.
Yes, I mean, that would be superb. That'd be absolutely superb. That'd be lush to do.
We'll be drinking Jack Daniels under the table, but aside from that,
I've never brought up Jack Daniels before. This is new to me. No.
Oh yeah.
Just saying, I hyper focus on a few things. One is my geekness. One is coffee, of course, and the other one is bourbon and whiskies. So it's something and in terms of the fact that before I buy a bottle, I watch videos, I research it, I see people tasting it, I look at the right glass to drink it from, and it goes on. So we do have that bit in common, I must confess.
We really do. Yeah, it's great. I've got the geekiness too. I like a lot of the stuff you like with that. Actually, I mean that could be an interesting one to discuss. Is actually, and this is so that we usually work out roughly what we're going to talk about. It's a free flowing conversation, but something I'm going to throw into the mix is that geeky stuff. What are your thoughts? So I've been watching Lord of the Rings, the new one, the one on Amazon.
Oh, I haven't watched it yet.
And I've been watching the new Game of Thrones. So
I haven't watched it yet either. But I do intend to, and I am a massive. So one of the reasons I haven't watched the new Lord of the Rings is fear. Is because I am one of those guys that read The Hobbit, read The Lord of the Rings, read the appendices, read the Silmarillion, read the Book of Lost Tales, read the Book of Tom Bombadil, and so on. I will say the Silmarillion is really hard going. But I've read all of that, and I've even got on CD there the Radio 4 10-part series from the 80s.
Oh, wow.
Which is phenomenal.
So cool.
And I'm frightened to watch the new one because it's not completely the worlds of Tolkien, and I'm finding that quite anxiety laden. So I'm like, I want to watch it. I'm going to have to watch it. I know there's a lot of controversy about it, but I am a bit. But to me, that's been wow. I think I read The Hobbit when I was 8 or 9. And I read The Lord of the Rings first. I could not put the book down. I read it over a weekend up in London.
I had the same thing. I read it. I struggled with it because I always started at page 1. I found it hard to get into until someone said to me, don't do that. We'll start with the story. Go back and read that first part of The Lord of the Rings before the story starts, the sort of the history and all that kind of stuff. And you'll love it. And that's what I did, and same thing, just couldn't put it down. Then went back, read the introduction parts and the history, and same all the other books that are associated. Just loved it. And I'm so glad that I beat the movies because I didn't have them as my frame of this is how I imagined it. When you've seen a movie, the pictures are made for you already.
No, it's really difficult. For me, what upset the apple cart for me was the Radio 4 series. Would you believe in the Radio 4 series, Ian Holm was Frodo, which I thought was amazing when they cast him in the film as Bilbo. But then in the movie, I just sat there going, "That's not your voice. That's not your voice. That's not your voice." And I found that
because you'd already got
I
that
spent
frame of
years
reference.
listening to the radio series.
I love it, and I've been so far. I've been impressed with the series. I won't say too much because I don't want to destroy. But what struck me, and this would be an interesting view, is going and watching the new Game of Thrones series, that House of the Dragon. Is with the original Game of Thrones series, I couldn't stop watching. I wanted to know what happens next. I don't feel invested in this new series at all. I feel really, I watch it hoping it's going to get better, but I've actually found it very slow. Lots, the problems. You remember the Star Wars, the prequel trilogy, and there was all the criticisms about it all being too political, and they're just sitting there talking about stuff. And that's what's going on here. It's all the politics of everything. And it's really, 3 episodes in, and it's, for me, it's just not much has happened, and it's just taking a long time to get going. And I'm hoping it will get better, and the
I,
production value is really good and
I
stuff.
have to be honest, from my itself and my geekiness when combined, I will. I mean, last night I went to the cinema to see Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan,
Oh wow!
which I
Oh,
haven't
that would have
seen
been cool.
with a great friend called Steve, and I haven't seen it since when I saw it in the 80s, I think, in Wolverhampton. And do you know what? It's still the best of the lot. It's still fantastic. I've watched it so often, I knew every single line in the movie. I was still in heaven. Because again, even from my geek viewpoint, beginning, middle, and end, safe, secure, fantastic. And then we came out of the cinema. I said to Steve, I said, when I first saw it, there was no internet, so to speak. There was no spoilers. You just came in. And when a character dies, in case anybody's seen it, I don't want to give spoilers. I know, 50 or 40 years too late. When that character died, I then my everything stopped for me. I just sat there in the cinema going, I wasn't expecting this.
Yeah,
I didn't know this was going to happen. And the rest of the movie then disappeared. In the rest of the movie, there's loads of clues that they may or may not be dead. Yeah, I missed all of those. And I said to Steve, I said I was in a state of shock. I went home on the bus, and I went back to see it as quickly as I could. I then got the book to look for any clues in books, and then I had a fan magazine. And in the fan magazine, it said they're doing the next one, Star Trek 3, and blah, 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 blah. But it's months before that came out. And in between the two, I was in a state of shock because I thought, you can't do this. And I wasn't expecting it.
I miss that. So that is one of the negatives of the internet. Is so much does get spoiled. I mean, when the Star Wars sequels came out, and there was obviously the big twist at the end of, or the big shock at the end of episode 7, I guess the
Yep,
first
yep,
of the
yep, yep, yep.
sequels. But it was kind of spoiled because all it takes is that one person and somebody had it written on the back of their car or something, and the photo went viral. And it was like, yeah, it's just annoying when that stuff happens. Like, you can't do. I love films like The Usual Suspects, although you can't watch that anymore because it's Kevin Spacey. The Fight Club, those sorts of films. I love them because there's these twists that you don't see coming. You can't make those films now because it just gets ruined by the internet.
You know what's interesting? There's some memes I share on my that autistic coffee shop page and so on. Sometimes I share images and so on. Watching a film for me is anxiety laden. Yeah. So I prepare to watch a film. What I do now when I watch a film is either I'm in absolute heaven, I watch something I watched before, and I love it. And I can watch some films ever and ever and ever and ever. I'm not a problem at all. When it's a new film, I don't want to give myself spoilers, but I research the film.
Yeah,
I go on international movie database and research it and look at the characters in it and maybe get some trivia that doesn't give spoilers away and stuff like that. And that reduces my anxiety in watching the movie.
that's really cool.
And then I watch the movie. And during the movie, you'll often see me going, oh, that's how they filmed that. That's how they filmed that. I'm still having obviously to the neurotypical people around me, it's annoying as hell. Let's be honest here. From my perspective, I'm having a great time. Because not only am I enjoying the fictional aspect of the movie, the drama, the fantasy, the what's going on, and when reveals do happen, I don't mind them in terms of they're all of a sudden something changing and so on. But I have to do all that research before. So for me, if somebody says, "Oh, choose a movie," I'm stuck
Yeah.
because I want to have time to choose it, look at it, and then scan it and whatnot, and then watch it. And I need a period
Well,
of time for
I'll
that.
give you something to have a look into and then watch because it's astonishing. It's on Prime at the moment.
Right.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, yeah. Right now, look. Now, calm down. And I'm to me and not to you. right? Oh my dear God. A, it's one of the best interpretations of the multiverse I've ever seen. I'm a geek. B, they're amazing. D, did you know that was the guy short round?
Yes, you
Yeah,
did.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
This has turned into a real geek fest, isn't it? It is. If you haven't watched it, it is.
Go and watch it. Someone put me. It's actually Chris from the Grumpy Yits said, "Go and watch it. You'll love it." Bit slow to start. But I actually didn't find it slow to start. I actually found it quite interesting. But what it's like you don't expect what it turns into, I guess, because sort of half
No,
an hour in, there's this sudden revelation.
but
The way it's done, I'm
but it's such a good interpretation of the multiverse from a geek viewpoint, from a physics viewpoint. You know, it's better than Doctor Strange.
by
It
a
is,
long
right?
shot.
It showed them how to do it properly, but she herself, she's also in other shows like Star Trek Discovery and so forth.
Yeah,
I think she's getting a story of her own in that as well, or a series of her own, so to speak. She's a phenomenal actor, an incredible martial artist. Remember Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It's Michelle Yeoh. She was in the Pierce Brosnan Bond film, Tomorrow Never Dies. So
Yeah.
she,
She's tough. She's tough.
she's really good. But what I love is that she's obviously. I mean, gee, she must be in her 50s now, maybe even her 60s. I'm not 100% sure. She doesn't seem to have aged, but they haven't hidden the fact that she's aged.
She's
She is playing an older person in it, but you see just the awesome skills she has. And I mean, I used to love kung fu films as a kid and stuff like that. There's something I've grown out of. But I love things like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, when they've taken something that is sort of martial arts related, but they make something more of it. It's not just about watching someone, Karate Kid style, the story of, that kind of stuff. It's not like that. This is just the science fiction element is there, but it's actually the story of self-discovery that's contained with it. Go and watch it. It is an astonishing film. It gets my film of the year so far. I loved it.
it is phenomenal from an autistic viewpoint. There's utter joy in finding something that's well made.
Yeah,
There's utter joy in it ticking boxes around my geekness with multiverse and so on and so forth. And she's across other fantasy genres, Star Trek. I'm like, wow, this is really great. She's also a phenomenal actor. But then also the thing I do then from an autistic viewpoint, I come back here and I'm on the phone and I'm researching it. How they filmed it, how they got this, who was involved in terms of scientific theory, how they did some of the stunts, what she thought about it, interviews with the cast. The whole thing in its entirety, to me, is so much more than watching a film. But when you add the film into the mix and everything else, that's why I just went like that. I just went completely heartbeat went, adrenaline went, because it is such a wonderful whole.
it's one of the things I miss about DVDs is all the behind the scenes stuff that you used to get, the extras. Because you don't get that with streaming platforms. Now, every now and again, they might chuck something on, but I miss that, the whole behind the scenes aspect that used to really come through with it. And I loved that. And I miss it.
And so many individuals, so many awesome neurodivergent individuals. He watches the same, he, she, or they watch the same thing over and over again. It's beautiful, beginning, middle, and end, safe, secure, comforting. What I will watch that movie. I think I've already watched it several times, again and again and again, because it is perfectionly beautiful, and I get such joy. And but watching again and again and again. I remember telling my partner, about self-regulation. There are things I do to self-regulate when I'm really anxious and so on. One of them, must have watched this hundreds of times. And again, so I can see my neurotypical friends thinking, what do you get out of it? I cannot almost describe what I get out of it in terms of self-regulation, peace, calm, reduction of anxiety. All I do is watch that 5-minute clip when Moriarty meets Sherlock and Watson at the swimming pool at the end of the third episode. I know everything from the actions, Westwood, the suit. It's what people do, everything. And when I'm very, very anxious, I watch that maybe 4 or 5 times, and it so brings me down. And that's the power, I think, for some individuals, some of a film, of a TV show that's excellently well done. We revisit again and again and again, and it's so powerful, not only from a joyous viewpoint, but also for reducing our anxiety. It's just so powerful for that self-regulation bit. And then there's the geek bit, the connection bit. It's just lush. So that film, absolutely superb.
Going to move on from that wonderful topic. I had the recent experience of nearly dying.
We've gone from one extreme to the other, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. So we've school summer holidays, we went to Butlins for a week. And I felt rough through the whole thing. It's hard to explain, but I felt like I had, it's going to sound gross, but I had trapped wind or something like that. It was just something was, and I've recently had a hernia op, and I thought it was related to that. It's just the way that's all healing. But I felt run down. But again, you kind of attribute it to things like when you're at Butlins, you do a lot of walking because you're walking from this to that to the other. And I thought, I just, it's just that. It's the operation I had. The food was really dire. And I thought, yeah. But there were a couple of other things that I ignored to do, gross stuff to do with the color of poo and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, if I'm still not right when I get back home, I'll just go to the doctor or whatever. The second last day we were there, I ended up having to, I sort of had a turn. I was walking back I'd had to take the kids aboard, won some stuff in the arcade area, and I just took that back to the car. And I was on my way back, and I just felt really tired. And my wife came out at the same time as I sort of sat down, and she said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I just having a bit of a turn, And she was worried, but she got the first aiders over. And I'm like, oh, I hate fuss like that. I really do. I hate it when it's just, yeah, I'm fine. But they made me sit down. They thought, so I don't know, people know I'm a diabetic as well. I'm type 2, but they were sort of like, it's high blood sugars. I'm like, well, I don't really get low blood sugar. I don't really get low blood sugar. That's not what type 2 is. You only get highs. But they were sort of, trying to sort me stuff. Sat down for an hour or so, and I was, fine and carried on. Woke up the next morning, and I'd had a bad night's sleep because of the discomfort. And my wife looked at me and said, "You do not look right. You've gone grey." And I'm like, oh. And it is that kind of thing. And again, this is, I guess, my neurotypicalness, if you like, neurotypicality, compared to her neurodivergence. She worries about stuff like that, and it's like instantly, I think a way of her dealing with things is often to go to the worst possible case scenario, so that it's not a shock if it is that.
You're going to talk about that, my cuthbert thing, and she may have done the same with you. I received the worst possible outcome, worked back from there, and I'm happy and safe. Strange as that sounds, I suspect she did the same for you. She went, "This is what it could be," and worked back from there.
She was like, "I'm calling an ambulance." And I was like, "Don't be ridiculous. We're going home." It was the morning we were supposed to be leaving. Went for a quick shower and had this, I felt exhausted, like I'd run a marathon, and just exhausted as sitting in there. And I'm like, oh. So I came and I sat down, and she was like, "No, I'm calling an ambulance." And I said, "Don't be ridiculous. It's okay. It'll pass, But she wouldn't listen, and she called she called 999. And they were it's going to be a 4-hour wait, for anything. And I'm like, it's just something. Then I suddenly felt sick, like, oh, okay. Ran to the toilet and got there, and she's still on the phone talking to them. And about 2 liters of blood came up. And that was like, okay. And she's freaking out in the back. "Oh, he's just throwing up blood, blah, blah, blah." And they're like, "Oh, okay." 5 minutes, there was an ambulance there, kind of thing. They managed to find us in all the mayhem of Butlins and what it's like getting around there. They ended up taking me in, and I was, like, this is pointless. It's a waste of time, and I hate wasting anyone's time, and I certainly don't like the attention or anything like that. But I was sitting in the back, so I hadn't laid down on the bed. I was sat in the seat, and the paramedic chap's looking at me, and he's like, "Just want to check a couple of things." And he's done the under the eyelids, and he's done a few things, and I'm starting to worry at this point. Like, okay, he's freaked out by something, and he said, "I'm just going to call ahead." What? And he's called ahead and said a couple of things, and I'm like, okay, just be straight with me, because this is worrying. And he said, "Look, if I was really worried, we'd be blues and twos right now. Not there. But I think you're going into clinical shock. Your body is going into a form of shock because of blood loss, I think." And he said, "There's a few." We got to the hospital, and I got wheeled straight into a bed, So it was like, at this point, he had me laid down. He already put a cannula in, got in, and they had me straight into a bed. And about 6 people all running around me. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? They basically, we're going to have to do an endoscopy. So that's the tube down the throat. We're going to have to, check for a few things. Within about an hour of being in there, they had me in the theatre, and it was hell. I've never had an endoscopy before, but it was unsedated. And so they just rammed this thing down my throat. And of course, I'd be a terrible porn star. My gag reflex is horrific. So I'm just there like, it's just blood coming up everywhere. And they're really, this patronizing, it's okay, you're doing really well. Yeah, really, just stop patronizing me. It's like, felt like Buddha. It was just really scary. It turns out I had a perforated ulcer. And apparently, if I had tried to drive home, I'd have likely bled out behind the wheel. Really scary. But what was scarier was, whilst all this is going on, I had to think about what was going on back at, with my family, because I'm a carer for my wife, carer for my daughter medically with their conditions and things that they need. But also, of course, father to my son, and what happens without me being there. We covered this in a way because obviously I had my operation. We talked about it a while back. I was able to prepare for that. I was able to have people in place knowing that this operation was coming up, whereas this was really sudden. And it was, thankfully Butlins were really good. They gave us a few extra days, and they, gave some vouchers so that the kids could do stuff. It sort of hit me with what happens with everybody else. Now, one of the things that I'm part of, so a lot of people know I'm an ambassador for Devon Carers. That was a real thing because I've got in my wallet a card that says I'm a carer. And, being able to, I vocalized it beforehand and stuff. So through Devon Carers, there's a plan in place if I'm ever, and I recommend anyone, if you haven't got in contact with you, if you're a carer and you haven't contacted your local carer support, do it and get that plan in place so that if something happens, they simply call through and your plan goes into action. So the people that are needed to be notified are notified, and things kick into place. We were covered by, Butlins really did. It had been an average holiday until then. And then that was sort of the kick in the teeth. But the way they handled it was really good, and they were really supportive. Yeah, it's a scary thing. And I think people don't realize quite how stressful that is as a carer. It's an added pressure that you have that people don't really get. It's not like, sorry, I'm sick for work today.
No, it isn't. I think because I mean, as well as being awesome neurodivergent, the majority of my career for the past 35 years has been in care and education, respites on an awful lot, and obviously in the work, the voluntary work I've done with families like you do. I've been in that position with families when have run sessions with information groups and solicitors about sorting out what to do if you're not there, because it's a plan you've got to have in place. I can remember when people like parent carers weren't around, and the care organisations they've grown. They are so important. Being part of a carers group is so important because of the support structure they bring, the information they can give, the resources they have, but just for having people around you. But, as we spoke many a time, I've spent with families and said, look, you need to plan for the hard, cold reality. When I thought Cuthbert could be bad news, my security was planning for whatever outcomes were there, and I'm fine after that. And someone say to me, you actually do come across as quite cold. Could you just plan the whole thing out? And really, if you're not that clear cut, it's very, very difficult to plan for what happens if, and it is extremely difficult. But but it is really important, because if something takes you by surprise, you've got that kind of knowledge base there that I've done this X, Y, and Z. It's going to be okay. And it's really important to do. And I remember the first one was with the NAS in Cornwall. Wow, maybe 25 years ago. And they had a solicitor come in, and they spoke to families about, you've got to do this, you've got to plan. And thankfully, from my viewpoint, the system, the support network has got better and better and better and better over those decades. And
Yeah.
thankfully so, and rightfully so. But you do have to plan for it. But it is, for me, there was a kind of security in, and I'm not going to say happiness, but it's security and structure in planning for it all.
Yeah.
And as I said, it was like, you're very clear cut on this. I don't think I could do that. And I've often had conversation with parents and family members saying, you do, you do
Yeah,
have to, you need it there.
you
If you
do.
got, you do.
Because if you don't, I mean, the dangers that are there that follow, and it is an added stress, is that, what happens? What happens if I'm gone? And it
Mm,
was a real confronting. I've never really been confronted with that. I'm not the healthiest person in the world, but that's, by the by. I've never been ill like that, where it's, literally, hours till you're gonna die, and the impact of that afterwards, and the impact of thinking, what happens to my kids, what happens to my wife, what happens to my family, essentially, those that I care for, who rely on me, who
mm.
need me doing this stuff, rely on it, and then the potential is that that's gone. You're gone. What happens there? It was just really confronting. So I wanted to get the message out there to people. Contact your local support. Best way to go about it is hit Google
Mm.
and just type in your local area, and then Carers Support Charity. Carers UK are probably the biggest in the UK and cover a lot of areas. Here in Devon, it's Devon Carers.
It's so important when I work with families and I'm doing consults with families, individuals. The first thing I do is make sure the parents have the right support around them, and the first place I send them to is their local parent carers, the support group, because they are normally phenomenal. And I make and you know what? So many families who have children diagnosed, identified, they sometimes they just go, "Hi, great, thank you. There you go. Yep, he's sure they're autistic. Bye." And they're not given these are organizations you can contact. These are places we can get some good information. In some parts of this country, postcode lottery, they're literally then left by.
I mean, it leads on to a sort of something else we talked about discussing. So, had this experience yesterday. So my wife was at the doctor's surgery, and a woman in her 60s had come in, and her father's in hospital, having just had a heart attack. He's been there for a couple of weeks. He's ready to come home, but needs care. Her mother, she's already a carer for, and now obviously looking to going to becoming a carer for her father. Herself has health issues. She went in and she was just saying, look, I need to know, we need an OT at the house. I've been told I need this by the hospital. No one's contacting us. What do I do? And it was this very dismissive, just go and Google it. Now, this was the admin stuff. And I want to tread carefully here, because I don't want to paint the picture that everybody's in the same boat. I think it was, it's one staff member who was acting a certain way. But I know that there is the information available to them to be able to hand out to people. And part of being a doctor's surgery, part of being that link, is that you should be giving that information. Now, this is a person in her 60s, probably not that literate when it comes to technology, may not use the internet. There is that digital divide that
Yeah, there
is there. So she just sort of send someone off, or just go and Google it. Struck me as, really dismissive. I wasn't there. This was sort of relayed to me. My wife ended up chatting to her and said, look, call my husband. He's actually an ambassador for Devon Carers, and he can help you with this. And thankfully she did, and we've put some stuff in place for it. But what really got me was that if my wife hadn't have been there, and the woman was in tears because she just didn't know what to go do, where to turn, what to do for help. And it's one of the things that really frustrates me at the moment is we've got this lack of compassion.
We spoke about COVID fatigue.
Yeah.
But there are, I think, there's certainly an unconscious bias when it comes to differences, be they health or neural based or whatever. And I'm reinforcing that there's certainly an unconscious bias when it comes to, he, she, or they are autistic, ADHD, PDA, etc., etc. But I gave an example when we were chatting on about somebody at my local doctor's surgery. Everybody else has been really complex and really, no, we're not helping you. This person was great, and sometimes it is the person, isn't it?
Oh, this comes back to that experience I had where my wife had called the ambulance, and obviously we end up with two ambulances. Now, obviously, I'm big. I don't think I need two ambulances. But the first one was obviously the first responder who comes out on his own. So they need to. But he was really dismissive, and he twigged, and I think he'd looked up my wife's details and established, oh, she's bipolar, and he just assumed she's overreacting. And he was saying it's most likely the sauce you had with your dinner last night. It's probably not blood. You won't need to go. He was actually talking me out of going in. And I was like, oh, fine. Yeah. You're a paramedic. Thankfully, this second crew turned up, and there was the pair of them. And she took the time to go and quickly check what I'd brought up, and was like, no, it's clotting. That's blood. And if they hadn't had come in, if they hadn't come at the time they did, he was about to say, you just go home and see your doctor on Monday or whatever.
It's an interesting one there too, like you said, because an assumption was made because of information they read about your awesome wife. Right?
Exactly.
An assumption is made when somebody says I'm autistic. An assumption is made when somebody says I'm an ADHD. People often go, what's PDA? I'm sure you know that one, yeah?
Oh, man, yeah. Public display of affection. What's wrong with that? Yeah.
Those assumptions are so devastating, so damaging. And that dismissiveness.
It's that dismissiveness, and it's like like you say, one of my favorite lines, I can't remember the movie it was in now, but it was a comedy, and it was like, you know what they say about assumption, it makes an ass out of you, an umption.
Yeah.
But it's which is obviously an incorrect term of the assume makes an ass out of you and me. But that whole thing was, he's assumed that she's overreacting, and he's assumed all this stuff, and he hadn't done what would be a basic check. Would be, I'm just going to go and check and have a look at it properly. And that was that. And he was saying it wasn't red enough. And it's like, yeah, but it's been, flushed. It's gone away a bit. This is what's left. And it was just a really interesting thing. And it's this dismissiveness, this just, you're for my wife, you're neurodivergent. I can see that. Yeah. Obviously overreacting, or potentially there's a history there of that kind of stuff, and so I can understand it from perspective. But realistically, in the end, my life was in the balance, and if the other two hadn't turned up and gone, "Oh no, he's going in,"
you wonder why so many people don't open up in a variety of professions and go, "I'm autistic," because of that bias. And this is the 21st century. That's
absolutely bang on. And in fact, people, there's so many stories out there of people who don't get work because they've divulged that they're autistic. I had the pleasure of interviewing a young chap who he's a race driver, races Aston Martin. He's an amazing race driver, but couldn't get work. It took someone to reach out after he'd been interviewed on the BBC about what he does.
I mean, so many, where I was at a conference yesterday, and somebody on the table I was working at, you get together to do groups and stuff, said something about so many employers design the job and hope to get the individual. They don't look at the individual and design the job for the individual and then look at their strengths. Because, my God, that'd be great for neurodivergent individuals, but also great for productivity, workforces, everything.
Well, I was having a chat with Roanna Brewer.
Yeah, awesome.
Amazing woman, the stuff that she does. But we were talking about the fact that, workplaces are actually better than schools at this, because if you do get it, they do make adaptations and stuff like that. But schools, especially, mainstream I'm focusing on here, don't. And it's such a rigid thing, and we're not structuring, and so we've got this situation. Kids are going back to school at the moment, and you've got this whole issue of school avoidance, and of course the schools bill. So check out the video I did with Roanna, because she talks in detail.
Yeah, and she is superb. She's absolutely amazing at what she does.
Fantastic. And the fact that parents could now be fined thousands of pounds, or even potentially face jail, if their kids are not at school 97% of the time. And it's like, you're completely missing the point of the neurodivergent individuals out there who need that bit of space. And often, school avoidance, it's because school's not a safe place for them. At least most offices will make some adaptations, but they don't want to, and they will hire someone typical rather than.
Whenever we do these podcasts, we have like 57 tangents here, but that's mine, your brain when we get together, really. The thing about there is, I know of schools in this county, let alone others, the county I'm in, which is Cornwall.
Yeah,
open with it, that are forcing children to sit still and forcing children to have eye contact.
This
When
is
I
it.
say forcing, I mean forcing. It's so many. I've heard. I had one parent at a session several months ago where are you going next? I'm going to the school to ask them why they're removing my child from the classroom and giving them eye contact lessons once a day.
We had so on the Grumpy Gits we talked about Catherine Burblesing,
Mm.
who's got a reputation as the UK's strictest headmistress. And she
Mm.
has this very. What really worries me is that she's, you know, if we end up with another Conservative government in the next term, she's going to be pegged to be the education minister because she's had success with her, you know, statistics and stuff. But the reality is her form of education is so narrow-minded, and it is forcing anyone who's neurodivergent to mask, which we've discussed so many times, and the issues that that can bring up, especially for kids, because they're not aware they're masking. It's just something that clicks in automatically. But issues down the path of PTSD and depression and things like that, because this has all been bottled. It's so damaging. And yet here she's being touted as, oh, well, you know, what really sucks is that so often these things that she makes a lot of sense. A lot of what she says, I sit there going, oh, that's finally someone saying it. You know, there needs to be more respect in schools, and there needs to be a respect for authority. And, you know, maybe not screaming and shouting when you're going from class to class is a good thing. But then you click into, oh, but also you make eye contact if you're talking with me. Completely, you know, that's painful for
ignoring research and proof and the voices of the actually autistic community and their families and carers for a long time. Yeah, just ignore it all. Ignore all that evidence-based and research.
Yeah, that's it. It doesn't matter. What I'm doing is working. No, it's working for you. It's working for your figures in your statistics. What you're really doing is causing a percentage of your kids, and it's not an insubstantial percentage, are going to have real issues down the track because you've been pushing them into a box they don't fit in, and it's causing issues. It disturbs me.
It's my neurokin. Yeah, I know this is an interesting combination here because you're a parent, an awesome one, and we know that. I see all the holiday snaps. Fantastic, yeah. But then also there's something. It's my neurokin. It's my neurokin. It's my neurokin, and the rage, the passion, the anger, the need for equal rights, and the list goes on. I don't think I'm putting into words. And there's an interesting connection there because there's that you know bloodline as a parent connection for you, and for me it's my neurokin, and that's an extremely powerful connection for me too.
I mean, we call this across the neurodivide, and Tigger and I, when we first started doing this, we came up with that title, and it's because we both have this belief that there's this meeting in the middle.
Yes,
it's because I see it so many times, and I see it. I'm blessed to know so many autistic individuals now, and see so much value, and it's been a massive learning experience for me. But part of that is realizing that I need to be able to step into their world and show some acceptance, and it needs to come the other way. And there's a resistance from a lot of the neurodivergent people out there. And it's this kind of stuff that creates it. And I don't think people realize when you've got that, how else do you respond other than being staunchly, you know, you're a typical neurotypical, and you've got this opinion out there, and it's all about you and your world. And
it is a really difficult one, but my belief system is, and I think perhaps we should do a separate one about this. I think this is deep for both of us. I look at other minorities and how they progressed in terms of rights and you know equality, so on and so forth. I believe at this moment in time, and I do understand that my opinions may change and so on and so forth. At this moment in time, I strongly believe the only way forward is to bridge that neurodivide. The only way forward is for neurotypical advocates and neurodivergent individuals to work together against that part of the population that is, for whatever reasons, fighting to not let us be equal.
That's exactly it. I've spoken it so many times. This whole thing, like you say, there's so many other minorities, and it's not perfect, and it's still got a long way to go for most of them. But there is something being done, something happening.
I did
What I've found is that in crossing that bridge, meeting you in the middle, meeting other neurodivergents in the middle, I've had to turn and face the same way as them. To look back at the neurotypical side of things and say, this is wrong. And it needs more people from my side to be able to do that. But it actually is, it's not standing and just facing you, it's turning and joining you.
I did a Saturday Live with the naughty Autie, Harry Thompson, several weeks ago. Awesome young man that he is. Very clear cut in his assumptions sometimes. Assumptions, his brain is, wow, I really admire his brain. And we spoke about identity as neurodivergent individuals, and also what was going on where you have some people in our communities. Obviously, we're looking at neurotypical individuals who seem to, and we started talking about fear. We started talking about there's almost that deeply unconscious bias in some individuals out there who don't want their world changed.
Yeah.
And so when we come along, either as neurotypical advocates and as neurodivergent individuals, and push for change, they go into absolute chaos, panic, knee-jerk mode to fight it every step of the way. And that's what some individuals are doing. They're just bringing the barriers down. We've got very deep on this one, haven't we? Bringing the barriers down and going, no, I will not let you alter my universe at all. Right. And in fact, the only way forward is to bridge that neurodivide. And it's that almost fear of, hang on, I don't want to accept any other neurotype apart from mine. So you're alien, and I don't want you to be here at all, etc., etc., etc. So I'll fight against you everywhere. That's why a neurotypical advocate, I don't know what better word to say at the moment, the journey we do together is so important in changing what's out there. And that's bridging the neurodivide, isn't it?
That's exactly it. And
to cross that neurodivide, it's so important. It's bridging that gap, which is just,
and that's anyone watching this, I think you're the people we want to reach. And it's, put it in the comments. I want to hear from you guys, because we want to hear from both sides of it, from neurotypical viewers to neurodivergent viewers. What do you think needs to change, and how do we do it? What are some practicals? I'd love to do an episode where we do focus on this.
Why don't we make that our next episode?
That's going to be our next episode. And what we want,
let us know. Let us know your thoughts. We want questions. We want ideas. We're going to do a whole podcast on that, I think, because it's right to do it. The education system, oh my God. Other areas where that seems to be that knee jerk of, no, we're not going to, you must do this, you must fit in, you must be neurotypical. There are people out there that are actively doing neural conversion therapy.
Oh,
God, I know, sorry. That's what this is. Why this is another whole podcast, isn't it? And really, we have gone from one extreme to another. The rain came in, we went off on a tangent, and we've kind of gone. So I kind of apologize for the duality of the first bit, and then the depth of this, but this is so important.
This is really important. I actually, but this is a positive thing, and I think it is a way to end on a positive, because these are the changes that need to be made, and this is where we can join together and actually do something to make this happen. There's this problem in the world that the reason it's been easier for other minorities to make progress is that it generally doesn't cost anything other than a change of mind and a change of heart. When it comes to ableism, which is, I've done an episode on ableism, go and watch it, but essentially it's where you are prejudiced against somebody who has differing abilities to yourself. That's ableism. And we live in a very ableist society. And the reason ableism isn't dealt with in the same way as racism, sexism, genderism, homophobia, whatever, is that if you want to adapt to make the world a better place for those who have physical disabilities, hidden disabilities, or are forced to be disabled by a world that just doesn't adapt to them, it's because those adaptations cost money. And it all comes down to the fact that it costs more than a change of heart, a change of mind, a change of attitude. That shouldn't ever be a reason to stop doing something.
With ableism as well, there's so many people that have that, imposter syndrome, that have that bit around the fact that their ableist attitude isn't just around them; it's been so pushed upon them, it's inside.
It's it.
And that internalized aspect of ableism is devastating too. Please send us in stuff, because this is we're both fired for this one. You can tell.
Oh yeah. It's a big issue
out there as well.
We're gonna do that, and we may even, Tigger and I are going to work together. We'll try and be in the same room for it, so we can.
Oh my God, that'd be super. Wouldn't that be
would be
superb?
wicked. So we'll work on that.
Wow.
We're going to leave it at that. Do put those comments in, and we will go through them. We will read them, and you may well be featured in the next episode with your discussion point. In the meantime, go hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell so that you know when we've got new content coming up. There is a playlist of Across the Neurodivide of all the episodes we've done together. Do go check it out. Tigger, thank you so much for joining me again, as always.
The next one's going to be huge. We really need your thoughts, your inputs, your voices. Work with and bounce upon and explore. Please do. And this is just lush. The extremities we've done today shows you what our normal conversations are like.
This is it. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you again on the next episode. In the meantime, stay safe.